Tate makes a point frequently that we're kind of a vibes-based country, like the United States really, really kind of votes and acts based on how they feel, far less than actual, evidence or whatever. And I think he's right, and I think that it works both for the right and for the left. Like the left has the vibe that Donald Trump is this authoritarian, and look, anything that they can come up with that confirms their feelings or how they, their preconceived notions, they're going to say, look, this is it. This is all the. I mean, how many times have you seen someone on the left write a think piece about how bad Donald Trump is and how he's a Nazi and stuff? And it doesn't matter what the policy is; everything confirms their preconceived notion.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you're talking about people giving into intuition over reason and logic. Yeah, I understand, but you still have to temper one of the best ways to temper that PR is with.
They don't have to do shit.
Well, they don't have to, but I mean, the appeal to the electorate is we still do have to use some sort of reason here. And I always ask progressives the same thing: show me the path. Show me the path for how Donald Trump mobilizes the military to seize control of the country. First of all, there's no way generals would ever go for that in a million years, or commanding officers or anybody else. They're simply going in to try to do something about these crime-ridden areas, which is a thing Trump talked about in his first term on his very first speech when he said American carnage is over. He's been wanting to do this for a long time. So I don't even know what they're freaking out about.
I would even go a step further. I've been kind of talking about this thing behind the scenes. I wrote this piece not too long ago talking about how Trump is a city conservative and that city conservatives are just functionally and fundamentally different from rural conservatives. And people are saying like, oh, are you saying they're better? No. I'm not saying anyone's better or
informed
worse.
Differently.
It's just that, they're formed differently. It's that Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, the MAGA movement was born on a golden escalator on Fifth Avenue, New York City, which is just fundamentally different than sort of the George W. Bush conservatism, which evokes this kind of, like a small town aesthetic and a pickup truck and a six pack. And those are all cool things, but they're just fundamentally different. And whereas the city conservative, it really is more law and order focused. And I actually remember Trump mentioning once. Yeah, he mentions once that it was the Freddie Gray riots back in 2015, and Melania, when they were burning Baltimore down, and Melania was watching that with him, and she said, and he'd been kind of kicking around, okay, 2016, do I want to run? He hadn't in 12, and they were watching that on TV, and her turning to him and just saying, look at this, you have to run. And it was those images of the breakdown of law and order, because in order for a city to be a city, right, in order for a city to be formed, it must be, it has to be red coded, right, at the very beginning, or else, I'm sorry, like the libs, you're not going to build a city. Like you never will. It's not going to happen. And you need to have those laws to establish that order from the chaos to begin with, or else you're just going to get chaos, which is what we have now. And so the city conservative is basically formed and activated by having all of that stolen from them, and they're fighting to get it back rather than conserving.
Yeah, but isn't what's happened? What usually happens here is when they send troops or anything like this, or even feds to come in and try to put an end to carnage going on in a major city, you have small splinter cell groups like Antifa, things like this, who are NGO funded, even though we can't seem to find the NGOs. They're NGO funded. Don't they go in and purposely agitate in order to make it seem like the people are really against this, the people hate this, this is really fascist and oppressive, and they're always trying to optically make it seem that way, even if it's really not that way.
I think it's a great point. I think you're definitely going to see an activation of Antifa groups especially in places, Portland, Seattle, probably Chicago as well. People
Seattle
forget
for sure.
Too that when Kyle Rittenhouse happened, and even though that was Kenosha, they were driven up from Chicago. So that was all groups of people from Chicago that had gone to Kenosha. So there are pretty sizable and well-formed organizations still there. And unfortunately, with the exception of Georgia, which I've actually said, Governor Kemp in Georgia has done a great job of rolling these guys up. And so Georgia's the one example. You're mentioning the NGOs. They actually went after the NGOs. They went after the bundlers when they were going after that Cop City, training center they were talking about. And they rolled up all of these people that were raising money for Antifa. And yes, got, what a surprise, they were actually finding NGOs, quasi-legal groups that were funding all of it.
Of course.
And so that hasn't been done nationwide.
And the purpose is
you're going to see
for optics, right? And there could be something here, and I'm glad you bring this up, to kind of draw that poison out, right? Another way for us to maybe start following the money back to other NGOs who are funding these types of groups. And yes, the idea here, they are going to try to make it an optical disaster by agitating whoever comes in to enforce law and order, and make it seem like these are fascists. They're here to take your rights and beat you in the streets and things like this, when actually they're agitating the law enforcement, right?
So I agree, Andrew, with your take on it, these mayors and governors being treasonous. And that's a good reason to go into these cities and clean them up. I'm also for tactical strikes against riots, but I am uneasy cheering on military presence in these cities if it's a sustained presence. And because I'm not confident that the right's going to hold power after Trump. And I see these people weaponizing that against us once again, whether it's on J6ers or if there's a quote unquote plague happening and they want to rip you out of your homes. I was in New York in 2020 and they were trying to pass a bill where they could just rip me out of my house, So that's my only problem with something like this, is what they can do with this precedence in the future.
Well, let me ask you a question then. I understand your concern.
Which, I mean, to your point, though, it's not just a precedent that Trump is setting, because they were doing this during COVID, right? So you already had Democrat Governor Tim Walz, was sending around stuff to enforce these lockdowns, and you can all see videos about this. So
on a state level.
On a state level, right.
But Biden didn't send out the military to this degree.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.